Welcome to Life's About Living. I'm Dr. Page, the best guy to see on the worst day of your life. And I have a very interesting conversation today with a man named Steve Williford. You may have remembered that incident back south of San Antonio where a young man came in a church with a gun and began shooting people. Well, Stephen was the man who bravely engaged this shooter and took him out. And so today we want to hear Steve's story. Steve, how you doing today?
I'm doing excellent.
Man, it's great to have you on the show, and we're excited about hearing your story. Now, I just want to just say one thing. We talked a little bit before the interview, and you were talking about how you take call. You know, I thought surgeons were the only guys who take call, but surgeons in a sense are kind of like plumbers. I know you're a plumber. And so I found it very interesting that you as a plumber took call at a hospital. So I guess we could start there. I think you were on call when all this happened. Tell us a little bit about your experience and what happened there in the church in the San Antonio region.
Actually, I wasn't on call yet. I was going to start on Monday morning, my on call. And for your viewers, we have to carry a pager. And, most millennials say, what's a pager? They're not old enough to remember what pagers were. It's a little confounded box that's about this big, and it'll get you where your cell phone doesn't.
Well, pagers are nice because you can actually select who you want to respond to and who you don't want to respond to. You don't have that choice with a cell phone when they call you at 2:00 in the morning.
Well, 1 out of every 8 weeks, our plumbing department someone from the plumbing department had to be on call.
Right.
And it's 24/7. It doesn't matter if it's 2:00, 3:00 in the morning, that goofy pager goes off. You have 10 minutes to call in and find out what the emergency is and an hour to be at the hospital.
Yeah.
And people ask me all the time, well, what's a plumbing emergency? Well, if you got 3 inches of raw sewage running down a sterile, clean hospital hallway, that constitutes an emergency.
That would constitute an emergency,
Yes.
That would constitute an emergency. Well, surgery is just kind of fancy plumbing. I guess I just was kind of struck, first of all, by the fact that plumbers have to take call at a hospital. Never heard of that. So anyway, you were about to go on call when all this happened. Tell us what happened next.
So I was in my bedroom relaxing, playing on my phone, checking my messages and things, and just trying to start the day off and just be real relaxing day. And it wasn't meant to be. My daughter was washing dishes. My oldest daughter was living with us at the time because she was engaged to be married, and she didn't want to sign another apartment deal that she would be stuck with when she got married. She wanted to marry and move in with her husband. So she moved back in with us. And if you're going to live with me, you're going to do chores. So she was washing dishes that morning, and she heard the gunfire. I'm an NRA instructor. All three of
y'all were very close to the church.
We were very close to the church.
How far away were you?
From my front door to the church's front door was right around 100 yards.
Wow, that close.
And,
so this was at First Baptist Sutherland on a Sunday morning. You just happened to be at the house resting, waiting for the next call from the hospital, and then all of a sudden you hear gunshots.
Yeah.
Wow.
So she ran in and said, Dad, doesn't that sound like gunfire? I said, right away, my bedroom, we closed in our carport and did more modern insulation, double pane windows and stuff. It's more insulated in my bedroom than it is in the rest of the house that was built in 1974.
Yep.
So I thought it was someone tapping at the window. And I went over and opened the curtain. I didn't see anything. She said, come into the kitchen. It's louder there. Well, when I walked out of my bedroom, I realized it was gunfire. I ran to my safe and opened up and got out an AR-15.
Wow.
People say, why did you grab a rifle instead of a pistol? If you have a choice of a rifle or a pistol, always choose a rifle. I'm a pistol
so you know, I do a little trauma work. We also say never bring a knife to a gunfight. I guess you bring an AR-15 to a pistol war, you'll be okay.
Well, at the time, he was shooting an AR-15 also.
Wow.
My daughter, when I ran for the safe, my daughter went outside, jumped in her car, and drove up the block to find out what was going on. And she saw him in black tactical gear shooting through the doors and entering into the doors of the church. Wow. He started shooting on the outside about shoulder height as you were sitting in a pew.
Wow.
Started shooting through the walls and walked all the way around the church and then back. And then he shot through the front doors and walked into the church.
Man, what a horrific scene. So this is a small church. It's in Sutherland. Is that right?
Sutherland Springs.
Yeah, Sutherland Springs. And it's a small church, of course. And so what happened next?
She came back, and by this time I was on the phone with my wife. She had, since we weren't going to church that morning, she decided we were building my younger daughter's house.
Wow.
My younger daughter was pregnant with my very first grandbaby.
Wow.
And we were building her a house on our own.
Wow.
And her and her husband were starting a home on our property and paying cash for the houses as we went. And we were at the point where my wife she's an amazing person, by the way. She decides that she's going to learn how to do something, and she just does it. So she was taping and floating the walls that morning. And I called her up and said, "Where are you at?" She said, "Well, I'm at Rachel's house, which is about 5 miles down the road." I said, "Stay where you're at." She could hear the panic in my voice. And she said, "What's going on?" I said, "Someone's shooting up the church." She said, "Don't go over there." And I hung up on her. She said, "I knew you were going over there." Well, you can't change a man's nature.
So let's kind of back up and let's kind of go through what was going through your mind as you're going to the church. What was going through your mind?
I wanted to make sure my family was in a safe place. I grabbed a handful of ammunition and just started shoving them in a magazine as I'm running out the door. My daughter came running in and she said, "Dad, there's a guy in black tactical gear shooting up the church." Wow. I said, "Did you call 911? She said, "I did. They're aware of it." Now I'm more scared of the police that are coming.
Right. They could think that you're the shooter.
Yeah. They're coming to a mass shooting. And I'm running over across the street with an AR-15 in my hands. What are they going to think when they show up? And so this moment, but we're so far away from everything else. I knew my community didn't have time to wait.
Yeah.
So as I ran out the door, my daughter followed me out the door, and I turned and looked at her and said, "Go back in the house and load me another magazine." And what I was doing, because I knew there was no way possible she was going to load a magazine and come running out, handing me a magazine in a shootout.
Yeah,
I knew she
you wanted to protect her.
I knew she couldn't, and I knew that was impractical, but it would send her back in the house to do busy work, to give her something to do. Well, I truly believe the Holy Spirit at that point was in charge of me and telling me exactly, because I was thinking more clearly than I had ever thought in my life.
Wow.
And so she ran back into the house to do that, and I ran across the street. Halfway across the street, I yelled out real loud. And why I would have done that, I cannot explain to you. Why would I give away my tactical advantage of surprise?
Right.
And I truly believe, again, I said, I believe the Holy Spirit was all over me and taking charge. And I believe it was the Holy Spirit calling out the demon that was within him.
Right.
At the moment inside the church, he had just shot Chris Workman in the back, paralyzing him from the waist down.
Wow.
And he put a bullet through Chris's mother's breast and then skipped on off of the concrete into her leg. And Chris heard me yell out. And if if you can imagine, and all the mayhem, all the shots going off, and all the panic and everything going on in the church, they heard me yell.
Did your scream distract the shooter?
Immediately when I yelled out, he stopped shooting. He had walked over to finish Chris and his mother off, as he had done everybody else. You know, he'd shoot them, and then when they were disabled or whatever, he would walk over and finish them off at point blank range with his pistol. He'd shoot them in the head. And that moment, he was walking over to shoot Chris and his mother when they heard me yell out.
Oh, wow. So let me just back up. What were the total casualties there at the church?
26 people died and
26. Wow. I mean, how horrific. So you called out. What did you call out? You just screamed, just or did you call out anything specifically, or just?
You ready for something real deep and philosophical? I yelled out, "Hey."
Hey, you. Hey, you know, actually, and that's a good thing. You know, so I'm involved in our church's, kind of protocols for safety. And one of the things that we learn is distraction. Distraction's a good thing. Sometimes even prevention, just seeing somebody who looks suspicious going, "Hey, how you doing?" You know, and just distracting them and making them think and getting them off their, off their focus is a good thing. So you distracted him, and then you got to the church. What happened then?
He immediately, when he heard me yell, "Hey," and I'm going to tell you, when Jesus walked into the garden and the two possessed men were in the garden, Jesus walked up, the demons within them said, "We know who you are. Have you come here to torment us before our time?" And Jesus drove the demons out. And I believe it was that same voice that yelled out, not what came out of my mouth, but I believe it was God calling the demon out. Because he immediately, and explain this, he immediately dropped his rifle in the church and came out to confront me with a pistol in his hand.
Oh, wow. That's a good situation in a sense. I mean, that gives you the upper hand.
Well, not necessarily, because he had on Class 3 body armor.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And what Class 3 body armor is, police usually carry Class 2 body armor, which stops pistols. He had on
AR-15 go through Class 3 body armor.
What's that?
Will a bullet from an AR-15 go through Class 3 body armor?
No.
Won't.
No, it will not.
So you had to hit him in the head, the neck, or the groin, or the leg, or something.
He had on a ballistic Class 3 helmet.
Yeah, wow.
And Class 3 body armor.
Wow.
And he was moving and shooting at me. He came out of the church. I ran behind a truck for cover. He hit the truck in front of me. He shattered the windshield of the car behind me, and he hit the house. And I heard God's voice tell me, "Don't worry about those. Do what I sent you here for." Coroner's report said I hit him in the left chest. I hit him in the abdomen. Years before, I was on a pistol team, and I trained with a former Army Ranger and a San Antonio police officer for our competitions. And he told me, he said, if you're ever confronted with body armor, hit them in the body armor. They'll feel it. And then
yeah, they do.
Yeah. Said, look for your chance and put one in the side, one in the hips, and one in the legs.
Right.
We trained for 3 weeks. Why would a plumber need to be trained to get around the body armor? And so he came out. I hit him in the left chest. There was a contusion there. I hit him in the abdomen. There was a contusion there. That moment, he ran for his vehicle that was sitting in the middle of the street.
Wow.
The driver's side door open and the engine running.
Wow. That stunned him, didn't it?
What's that?
That stunned him enough to get him to leave.
He was trying to get away.
So in other words, your shots didn't really, I mean, he had a gunshot wound to the chest and the belly, but the bullet didn't penetrate because of his armor, but it was enough to stun him to get him to leave.
He tried to leave.
Wow.
And as he turned to get into his door, I put one between his plates and his side.
Wow.
It has a front plate, has a rear plate, Velcro velcros across the side. I put one in his side and I put one high in his legs.
Wow.
He was still able to struggle and get into his vehicle, and he put 2 rounds through the side window. And I saw the glass open up and then glass falling. Everything was so slow motion. It was crazy.
Wow.
And I couldn't see his head because of the reflection of the glass in the sun. But I put one where I perceived his head to be. The coroner's report said he had a split across his forehead.
Wow. Okay, we're going to stop here for a second. Listen, thanks for being on Life's About Living. We're going to have this video on our website and also on our YouTube channel. If you want to find out more about Life's About Living, you can text text LAL, Life's About Living, LAL to 66866 and find the rest of these videos. But we are here with Steve, and Steve is telling us about his experience in the San Antonio area where he confronted a shooter at a church